Hey everyone, it's 2025, and I guess we're really doing this.
Assets. We're going to be changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
I know that a lot of people are sick of hearing about Trump. It's tiresome, but I want to talk about it anyway today because something's different. Everything's worse.
Which has a beautiful ring that covers a lot of territory. The Gulf of America. What a beautiful name.
It begs the question, how did we get here? Was he saying this 8 years ago? There's a lot of explanations. But if you watch TV or YouTube or seemingly go outside anywhere, you're going to run into a multitude of people who are willing to do any sorts of mental gymnastics to make any sort of excuse for him or plenty of others, and I'm here to ask why. What motivates people to go to the ends of the earth to rationalize reckless and destructive behavior of powerful public figures? You'll see in a minute, but I'm not talking about people with differences in opinion. I'm talking about saving face for people partaking in morally objectionable behavior. And I think I have an idea. Americans tend to be enamored with the Bill of Rights, or to be more broad, the legal framework that America was founded on. Freedom of speech has been a huge defining factor of that. People bring it up all the time as an excuse to say some really terrible things. When you can't defend yourself on a moral basis, you can always move the goalpost to defend the legality of what you say. You can't stop me. This is what wins in courts, after all. And I think people are very fixated on court rules in America when they determine how to judge someone at stake. Another founding principle of the American court system is the notion of innocent until proven guilty. You need a trial before the state can actually consider you guilty of committing any crime. This is generally a pretty good law. The state shouldn't go around punishing people if there's a possibility that actually they didn't do anything wrong. So, as everyone knows, in a criminal trial, it needs to be proven that the defendant is guilty without a shadow of a doubt. And somewhere along the way, people started applying this law to the court of public opinion. That you can't really make assumptions about the allegations of public figures without it being proven in some objective, legal way. But that doesn't really make sense, does it? We as witnesses aren't the ones enforcing the law. Justice may be blind, but we're not justice, and we're not blind either. We have eyes, and we're very capable of evaluating situations ourselves. And if we do, us being wrong is much less consequential than the court being wrong. To be less abstract, what I'm saying is that even though O.J. Simpson reached an innocent verdict, we know what his prosecutors were not capable of proving without a shadow of a doubt. And we know that Derek Chauvin murdered George Floyd not because of his guilty verdict, but because of the evidence that we were able to see before the court even went on trial. Besides, sometimes you can just tell, like a parent that knows that their kid has been lying about where they've been. When someone comes home smelling like beer, you don't need video footage to prove that they've been out drinking. In real life, you don't need receipts to arrive at the truth. The broader point I am making is that finding legal innocence and actual innocence are two completely separate processes, and they should be. The timeline of what has happened and what people do in real life is not retroactively changed by the verdict of a court. So I will always find it alarming when people are only able to determine someone's moral innocence with the same open-mindedness that courts are required to have, where it isn't about whether you truly believe if someone is at fault or if someone actually did something, but rather you're always looking for possible excuses or evidence that the person could possibly be innocent in some unlikely circumstance by searching for plausible deniability. It is this exact behavior that lets supervillain level scumbags get away with some inexcusable behavior, as we will examine. And when it's inescapable that someone actually did something, people will tell you that it's their right, as if that makes it acceptable. Cheating is legal. Being racist is legal. Being a Nazi in America is legal. There are plenty of things that people do that are very worthy of public scorn that I wouldn't go as far as to say should be prosecutable. These are two separate conversations that a lot of really simple people want to merge. With my thesis established, I would like to set a stage. America's abusive relationship with Donald Trump has been fascinating to watch. It was a messy breakup, and Biden was at best a shitty rebound partner. I return to something familiar, seemingly more stable, responsible, common sense, respectful, just a lot of things that Trump seemed to not be. But you know what? It didn't work. Through the whole relationship, America never really got over Trump. And it seemed that over time, a lot of the differences between Biden and Trump weren't actually there, at least not to a great extent. It's been so long. Maybe he wasn't really that bad in the first place. So, in a move of desperation, America unblocked Trump and called him up again. And there were red flags the whole way.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
But you know what? This is nothing new anyway. We knew he was like this. We want change, and we're going back, damn it.
We are not going back.
This was the stage that was set for someone as vulgar and dishonest as Trump to feel normal. But he wasn't. And he's not. You'll notice that a lot of the excuses that are made for him aren't particularly good, but they achieve their goal. This is nothing new. This is his brand. Yeah, his rhetoric isn't very good, but he's making promises that I want. Well, how did those promises go last time?
Because you'd be in jail.
We will be able to immediately repeal and replace Obamacare.
Well, you know, he doesn't always exactly mean what he says.
He said he might want to use military action in Panama and Greenland. Are you
he won't do that.
You don't think
Trump
he's going to do that?
says
Yeah.
I think a lot of the voters who vote for Trump take Trump seriously, but not literally.
This is what makes it covering Donald Trump so very difficult. What does he mean when he says words?
And this is at the heart of what I want to discuss. Making excuses for people. And not just Trump, but so many other public figures that are just too popular or influential to condemn time and time again, with the complete disregard for how anything they say aligns with their past behavior. Let's talk about the inauguration.
We will begin the complete restoration of America and the revolution of common sense. It's all about common sense.
Yeah, I mean, what do I even say about this? It's condescending to anyone who isn't completely on board with his agenda, and it vilifies a ton of people that really just don't deserve it. We'll get back to that. Let's talk about the thing that everyone's already sick of.
For making it happen. Thank you.
I'm not going to entertain the question of what he was really doing here. Instead, I'm going to make the truth of the matter clear. He was doing a Nazi salute. The real question isn't if he did it or not, as if we don't have eyes, it's why he did it. What did he mean by that? And I think a lot of people are gaslighting themselves into disbelief for a very clear reason. It's just so unbelievable that the richest person in the world would make his way into the innermost circle of the federal government to do a Sieg Heil in front of everyone. That's so crazy. That would never happen. So it didn't. And stop saying it did, because you look crazy. This is because Elon Musk has established himself as some kind of Tony Stark to anyone who hasn't really been paying him much attention. They vaguely know, he's a rocket guy, he has lots of money, he's very online, he loves electric vehicles, which are good for the environment or something, and he owns Twitter, and he's made hundreds of billions of dollars from it. Clearly, he must be doing something right. A lot of people think about billionaires under the assumption that the system actually primarily rewards people for hard work and intelligence. So by that virtue, Elon Musk, the richest person on earth and a tech giant, is the farthest thing you can imagine from the white trash that is associated with the most comprehensible version of racism. When I call this chapter Ethos of Status, what I'm trying to suggest is that people tend to think of CEOs and billionaires as people who earn the position that they achieve, so they interpret everything through the lens that they are of sound mind, so they must be onto something at all times. But that leaves a hole in their plot that they got to fill. If that wasn't a Nazi salute, what was it? It's a Roman salute. He was just motioning his heart goes out to them. He didn't say Heil Hitler. He's just autistic. Well, Democrats do it too. Will you just stop talking about it?
Just shut up.
There is so much to pick apart, and I'm going to do it for a few reasons. Firstly, each fallacy illustrates something unique about their way of thinking. A Roman salute? So, it was a salute, just a different one that didn't even exist in Rome?
This painting, painted in 1784, it became pop culture to enjoy a Roman salute after a nationalist artist started adopting it into their media in 1919, and it was adopted by the Italian fascist regiment. The Nazis decided it should also be the salute of their party. America wouldn't even know what the salute was. Afterwards, other far-right fascist groups adopted it. There has never been any discovered Roman literature to ever mention the salute.
This explanation is particularly weak because it confirms that it was definitely a salute. The question is just which one. And conveniently, they happen to look the exact same. They win the argument by default, because in that case, it would be feasibly impossible to do a Nazi salute without doing a Roman salute. This is an example of an argument that Ian Danskin from Innuendo Studios calls the card says moops. To be reductive, you cannot prove that I don't believe the clearly disingenuous argument that I am making. The name comes from this Seinfeld clip where you can see that action at play.
Who invaded Spain in the 8th century?
That's a joke. The Moors.
Oh no. The correct answer is the moops.
That's not moops, you jerk. It's Moors. It's a misprint.
I'm sorry, the card says moops.
See, it wasn't the Moor, it was the moops. It wasn't a Nazi salute, it was a Roman salute. I dare you to prove me wrong. If you want a better understanding of the term, I will link the original video in the description. The point is that they're moving the goalpost from explaining what they saw to proving that it's true without a shadow of a doubt, without plausible deniability. Here's another example, and the next argument I do want to debunk. He's just autistic, and he was stimming on stage. Or something.
First of all, the guy's autistic. He has Asperger's. This guy has never been in the limelight. He's done interviews, which he's freaking amazing. He will...
No person who ever makes this argument is actually autistic. Funny. And that includes me. I have Asperger's, the same thing Elon has. But you would never catch me throwing out that gesture. Not at 21 years old and not at 53 years old. And if I did, if I was just so much more autistic than I am that I couldn't help myself and I just had to, well, that would be pretty fucked up. My conclusion is that if you were too autistic not to do a fucking Sieg Heil, you should be nowhere near a podium at the inauguration.
I have never, in my training or experience working with people on the spectrum, I've never seen somebody just break out the Heil Hitler salute because of their autism.
Then there's that sad attempt at whataboutism. This is real, and I promise I am not making any of this up or embellishing anything. People are literally taking screenshots of Democrats when their arms are extended or doing any sort of motions of waves where their elbow or shoulder is straight. Not always both. As to equate to this. This doesn't work for a multitude of different reasons that don't take long to explain. First of all, when you compare both these actions as equally condemnable, it doesn't actually save face for Elon. Like, at all. He's just as guilty in this scenario.
I am become meme. Yeah.
Second, we have eyes. It's not hard to see through these particular smoke and mirrors. They're not doing a Nazi salute. But you can't prove I don't believe they are. Do you see yet how central disingenuous argumentation is to these people? They don't believe anything they say under any actual scrutiny. And as for that little excuse he thought of after,
My heart goes out to you.
yeah, that was a nice save, wasn't it? That's kind of how dog whistles work, though. You plant a hidden meaning for a real intended audience and a message that'll deceive the general public from what you actually mean when you say things. How am I sure of this? You know who doesn't agree that he wasn't doing a Nazi salute? Nazis. And if these weren't the people he was trying to impress, he would probably put extra effort into dissociating himself from them. Probably like a press release or even a tweet. Just one tweet that said, what I did wasn't a Nazi salute. Sorry to trigger you, I hate pronouns. But what he actually tweeted instead was the exact opposite.
Elon Musk on X with a message containing a series of Nazi-related puns, including saying, quote, bet you did Nazi that coming.
This isn't even a good dog whistle anyway because everyone knows what he did, which is why it backfired so hard. Either way, there is literal footage of him doing that gesture correctly, which kind of undermines the whole defense anyway. 0 out of 10. There's something extra you might notice about all these defenses lying together. They are not even remotely compatible. It is clear reading all these people that some of them have to be lying. It wasn't a salute at all, he was just stimming. Or no, it was a salute, it was just a different one. Or no, it wasn't a salute at all. He was actually just communicating something different entirely. At least one of these people is lying. Or maybe none of them are telling the truth and everything is exactly how it seems. That is something you will find when people are trying to justify something that isn't true. There are multiple routes to the truth. There are many different justifications for why things happen if they are real, but they rarely contradict each other. Something else that kind of connects all these arguments is that they are not persuasive if you are thinking vigilantly. But the goal is not to win you over, or even to reach the truth. They're performing a generic motion to refute what you are saying. Your argument must be met with a counter-argument. How good it is to you doesn't matter to them, as long as they exert any sort of effort to do this song and dance to defend their own reality, that Elon Musk is good. It really isn't even for you. It's for themselves and each other. It's to signal to each other, no guys, we're good. We still don't have to actually listen to criticism. They all have one goal, and it is not to shut down your argument. It is to shut down you. All of these defenses can be summarized with one very simple phrase. Shut the fuck up.
Hitler, Nazi, whatever. Just shut up. Just shut up. You got, first of all, the guy's autistic.
So that's their goal. to stave off any notion of opposition. Don't complain. That's so unpleasant of you.
The chainsaw for bureaucracy. Chainsaw!
Let's look at some other ways that people defend Elon in particular. There is a lot to him besides this controversy. In fact, his current reputation influences how people interpret that salute entirely. Me as well. I was here when he unbanned Nazis and white supremacists from Twitter basically for fun. I was here when he endorsed the far-right party of Germany that even Germany says is too Nazi-aligned.
I think there's frankly too much of a focus on past guilt, and we need to move beyond that.
The German crowd cheered as Musk urged them to set aside guilt over the Nazis and the Holocaust.
I was here when he spread so much blatant anti-Semitic rhetoric on Twitter that he had to go to Auschwitz on an apology tour with Ben fucking Shapiro. This occurrence is not out of the realm of possibility for Elon's behavior. The point is, not everyone keeps up with Elon, and they shouldn't be forced to. So in that case, they mostly know him as the EV guy who wants to save the environment. This might have been a fair assessment when I was in middle school, but we are about 8 years removed from that time. If you only started hearing about him since the pandemic, you would know him for basically the opposite values. And that is kind of dangerous. He's riding the goodwill of his old reputation while betraying it completely. This is where the argument came from that liberals liked him until they were told not to. Yes! And what drives me insane is that the people who love him for his true colors continue to defend him on the basis of his old principles. Not because they believe it, but because they think it'll win them an argument against me, or someone like me. As if he is exercising any environmental responsibility. The card says moops. It additionally helps that his old reputation has kind of been immortalized by meme status. You know, back on places like Reddit when he appeared to be more moderate than he actually is. This is actually an extremely common train of thought when it comes to defending idols that don't really need your defense. Let's talk about one of the most famous examples.
I'm not trying to be shocking. I like Hitler. I do not. The Holocaust is not what happened. Let's look at the facts of that. And Hitler has a lot of redeeming qualities.
So tell us, you think Hitler?
Kanye West has more or less earned his position as the most influential hip-hop artist in a long time. He's responsible for some of the best albums of the 2000s and the 2010s. 2020's not so much, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. He spent the first half of his career making bold artistic decisions that resonated very deeply with millions of people. It backed his braggadocious energy to transform him into someone that's truly untouchable.
Everybody wants to know what I would do if I didn't win. I guess we'll never know.
He was cocky, but it all felt warranted. He made some of the most iconic music ever. He's allowed to be a little crazy.
Hey, good morning, Kanye.
Shut the fuck up. Kanye had a lot of media moments that were equal parts shocking, funny, and iconic.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
I'll say this now because it's going to be relevant later, but Kanye being proudly black and relatively progressive was also a defining characteristic in defining his early fan base.
My black balls.
Then his more courageous moments started to ruffle feathers in a new way.
Thank you so much for giving me a chance to win a VMA award.
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
He was a bit of a woman basher. Maybe a little porn-brained.
I love your titties because they prove I could focus on two things at once.
But there was not really a common consensus on how to react to this seemingly theatrical misogyny bleeding into his real-life behavior. One party jumped ship. This guy's turning out to be really scummy. Another party wasn't really bothered. We know Kanye is like this. If he's not great with women, whatever, it's part of his rash personality. It's not gonna be for everyone. In a way, it fits his public persona. He's rowdy, he's lavish, and he's not a gentleman. They were primed to this behavior. Then time went on, and Kanye twisted the knife.
I feel like me and Taylor might still have sex. Why I made that bitch famous.
And a lot of people that stuck around the first time Kanye dissed Taylor were in for a penny, in for a pound. So this comment was fair game. The history of the Kanye and Taylor beef probably helped radicalize a lot of people too, because the way party lines were drawn seemed to be very boys versus girls. And then animosity only grew because every couple of years, either one of them would interchangeably revive the beef. To the respective fans, it was a victory lap. But to the other side, it was a petty jab and probably dishonest. But But the drama got people worked up on both sides and kind of spiraled down opposing echo chambers where they think everyone on the other side is a complete idiot. This leaves a lot of Kanye fans very vulnerable to sexist narratives, because the way they see it, the more Kanye keeps speaking his piece, the more women seem to overreact. Then he started saying slavery was a choice.
For 400 years, that sounds like a choice.
This was another breaking point for a lot of people. It became very clear that Kanye was performing a lot of his optics for attention. A lot of people were aware of that and thought that it made it better, but I want to be clear here. When you say abhorrent shit and then say it's a joke as a defense, you're still normalizing that talking point, both for people who don't mean it and people who do. Nazis famously get their foot in the door in online spaces using internet memes. It's a medium where you can pretend to be disingenuous if you're under fire, but you can still win people over to your side. A lot of terrible people cling to power when people don't take what they say seriously. Then he wore a MAGA hat and promoted Trump before running against him for president. Okay, if you want to. It was a really strange time to be a Kanye fan because he was releasing even mixes of great and terrible music. And there was still humor to a lot of this. He ran for president on the ticket of the birthday party. To a lot of people, this was a stupid joke in the peripheral of really good music. And that adds genuine character when that's how you see it. His older image had been immortalized by memes the same way Elon's had. Then Kim divorced him. When she started dating Pete Davidson, Kanye resorted to the most incel behavior possible. He love-bombed her, called Pete Skeet on Twitter, and he kept harassing both of them on social media on a scale so public that the Super Bowl literally had to compete with it on the Twitter trending tab. Knowing what we do at this point about the culture that Kanye has cultivated, you can imagine the difference of perspectives between the general public who does not regularly keep tabs as closely on him, and the people that have gradually been conditioned to his erratic behavior. At this point, there were two camps. One said, dismissively or passionately, Kanye West is a weird and bad person. And the other said, boys will be boys. And I think you know what happened next.
I like it.
I don't like it. And I know you're trying to be shocking with that.
I'm not trying to be shocking. I like Hitler.
The frog has been boiling for 14 years. We are officially at the point where whoever is on board is either willing to ignore this or actively appreciates it. So what was this sort of biography for? I want to illustrate how long and gradual this process of radicalization was. Not every Kanye listener was under a spell, but at least a few million swallowed each progressive pill on his pipeline from a progressive to a meme to a Nazi. Kanye West is the benchmark of how a pop star can radicalize a fan. Build an abrasive and divisive public personality, vilify the people that criticize you, maybe even say in the most public way possible that they're censoring you from speaking the truth, and then use that for insurance come the backlash.
If they make the twits bigger, they're trying to make us fat.
If you don't have logos to anything you're saying, clout will make for a powerful substitute. We know this because a lot of people who are afraid to say Hitler was right have no problem saying Kanye was right for directly citing Hitler. I have had people in the midst of Kanye's Nazi streak come into my place of work in Boston wearing Kanye for President merch in 2024. So why do people believe him? It's not because he's speaking the truth. Whenever you find yourself asking this question, look to what got the audience hooked. The music. They're not here for the politics, they're here for the music. And that's what they'll stay for. And by that same metric, they will not leave until that well dries up or they stop liking the music. This is why the rationale of the defense he made graduation caught on a lot faster than Jews will not replace us! And I find that this onboarding process has a lot more to dissect than anything Kanye actually says. Because while he gives me a lot to debunk, it's not really difficult. Like, he doesn't use misleading stats or anything, he just makes shit up. Like, no, Hitler didn't invent the microphone or the highway. That's a lie from thin air. But what are people saying in his defense? Yeah, okay, he did make graduation. I guess we're at kind of an impasse here. This is a really common defense of entertainers of any kind. They might have done a terrible thing, but their catalog is pretty good. Like, sure, I guess, but that doesn't really address anything. I guess it started with the conversation of separating the art from the artist, and people were defending their musical taste from being associated with people like Kanye or 6ix9ine, for instance. But somewhere along the way, the debate was entirely bastardized because now anytime someone uses the term separate the art from the artist, it doesn't mean what it says. It just means shut the fuck up. Like, when they say that, they're not saying separate the art from the artist. They're just saying, like, I don't want to hear about it. They don't like being challenged about the things they find entertaining. A lot of people also defend him on the basis of him having, like, mental health struggles, which is Really more because they like him already and less because they actually think that excuses anything. Which loops back to the idea that if you like a creator's work, they can somehow do no wrong. And you know that they're too far gone because with his new album, which is all about how he's a Nazi, fans are distorting the narrative to suggest that he's just challenging free speech norms.
He's not saying Hitler is good. That's how this is going to be reported in the press. Right there off the top, he's saying, I'm bad. I'm doing bad things. I'm not being smart. I'm not being logical. I'm not making any sense. I'm bad. I'm a villain. That's why I'm a Nazi. In other words, the Nazis are the bad guys. And Hitler's the bad guy. And I'm the bad guy.
Stop dancing around it. If this doesn't make it any clearer, what could? And this goes back to the idea of plausible deniability. Like, it's in your face, and they're looking for like a way to take this thing that he's saying to you and twist it into some other more innocent meaning entirely. And I don't know. I don't think they would be having this reaction if it wasn't Kanye saying it. But because it's someone that they're familiar with, well, we have to find a way to make this more comfortable. But it's just particularly frustrating to me that, like, he's telling you exactly what he wants to say, and his fans are trying to defend him and suggest that he's saying something else. Like, at this point, if he's not a Nazi, what would it sound like if he was? There's nothing. That's sort of the fallacy that I want people to recognize when I talk about plausible deniability, is that, like, there's going to be plausible deniability at this rate for anything. There's no way to prove anything. No one's bad. Everything's actually subjective. Every terrible thing that someone does is up to interpretation. They probably just meant something else entirely. But only if I'm already a fan. But people are only really willing to use that suspension of disbelief if it's someone they're already devoted to. So a lot of people defend him because they've just already committed themselves to him. It sounds kind of familiar. It's almost like
a lot of people say, oh, Trump was only kidding with the wall. I wasn't kidding. I don't kid.
So today, Elon has taught us that people's first impression of a celebrity is highly formative of how they are perceived generally by the media. And by that extension of logic, it is incredibly difficult for a celebrity's reputation to go bad, because if this is how they truly are, wouldn't we have known from the start? After all, how can they be rich and successful and evil? They would have been caught by now.
If I was fucking young girls, I promise I'd have been arrested.
And we've discussed through Kanye that when people attach themselves to public figures, it is incredibly hard to learn to disagree with them. Now apply that to a public figure who has billions of dollars that they must have earned, who runs for president on a conservative but also populist campaign that eventually drops the populism and replaces it with authoritarianism. That's right, we're finally getting back to Trump. Does it look good? I think it looks better. Because Trump slowly stopped promoting his most populist rhetoric and given some time, maybe even contradicted it. In the industry, we call this lying, but a lot of people don't recognize it while it's happening because it happens over the course of years rather than days. And these old populist views that Trump has since abandoned, or never really meant, come in real fucking handy when Republicans want to win arguments. Are you calling Trump homophobic? Well, here's a video from before you were born of him saying gay marriage is tolerable and should be legal. He can't be homophobic. Are you saying he's xenophobic? Well, here's a tweet where he said he loves Hispanics. Are you saying he embraces the support of white supremacist hate groups? Well, here's footage of him kicking someone dressed as a Klansman out of a rally. He can't be racist. These arguments overlook two things. First, this is all extremely performative. There is nothing holding him to his own word. This is extremely obvious if you know anything about Trump. It is incredibly common for politicians to lie for the sake of optics and contradict everything they claim to be for when it comes to actual legislation. Conservatives rightly point this out when Democrats do it, but suspiciously forget how to do it when evaluating Trump. So when Trump says he values the marginalized groups that vote against him in wide margins, then consistently attacks their employment at any level as DEI initiatives and their presence as an agenda to diminish the white race, I have a hard time believing him. Second, this defense relies on everyone forgetting anything that would nullify any kind words of his past. I'm not concerned with him saying that he's never read Project 2025 if everything he has ever said or proposed or laid out so far has been completely in line with that plan that he supposedly disavows. They are functionally the same. Besides, the mantra of I disavow is commonly used by conservatives to optically distance themselves from the hate groups that they directly cater to in a way that doesn't actually show any disapproval. It's a dog whistle. The frustrating part is, if you're arguing with a conservative in the wild, they don't like Trump for any of the reasons that they cite to counter your arguments. They don't like him because he truly loves gay rights and Mexicans and fights white supremacists. The arguments they make do not reflect why they believe what they believe. They're just using old footage in pawns of a very stupid game of chess. They want to hit you with another hard maneuver that's hard to respond to, even if it doesn't really reflect reality. Stumping you is not outsmarting you. It's another disingenuous move for them to be able to tell each other that it's still cool to die on this hill. The card still says moops. But this friendly image of Trump is still important for him to lay out because it makes him approachable on some level. Maybe we can't believe it anymore, but 8 years ago, that's how he hooked a lot of people. He could not have won the 2016 election if he opened his campaign with everything that he's saying now. He's actually way more conservative than he was in 2016. But he's riding that wave of goodwill that forms the lens through which people see him. Same as Elon and Kanye. Same as them, it's hard for people to change their mind about someone if they've already committed themselves to him. That's because Trump was able to prime his audience to progressively authoritarian rhetoric by starting the campaign with a first impression that was much tamer than anything today. Defense for a lot of crazy shit, like Trump trying to overthrow the election, came from the fact that Trump was the person that they voted for. They were on that train, so he has to be right. Status quo type shit. A very common excuse for Trump is that the left exaggerates about him. And once upon a time, this could have been true. For as overtly unprofessional and sinister as his first term was, I think that a lot of people vilified him so unconvincingly that it strengthened his campaign.
Guy who's going to pay for the wall says what?
I have the right to take stuff, be it classified documents or candy bars, to the checkout that I hide in what I call my shoplifting code.
So the boy cried wolf, and a lot of people aren't listening anymore. A large portion of society is shut off from hearing any criticism of Trump at all because of how crazy the libs sound. There are people like Bill Maher that form their whole careers around this sort of perspective. This got even worse in 2020 when quarantine really sent leftist social media down a rabbit hole of rhetoric that just got increasingly abrasive. Does anybody remember Kill All Men? An anti-patriarchy movement that defined manhood and men as a placeholder for everything wrong with gender inequality? That being a man didn't mean being male and meant being an upholder of toxic masculinity? Yeah, this shit is poorly thought out and extremely hard to follow for anyone who isn't already tapped in. Here's a group of Redditors rationalizing the rhetoric of the slogan. They bring up some very good points and not much of what they say is necessarily wrong. But that doesn't matter because this understandable thought process is wrapped in the most abrasive, backwards sounding messaging. This is not how you win people over to your side. This pisses people off. I bring this up because this is an example of the things that form the lens through which Republicans view the things we say. That the left can be just as hateful and nonsensical as the right wing, so when you talk about the right wing's figurehead, they should be taken with a grain of salt. But now, in 2025, how can I possibly describe this AI video that Trump shared on social media about gentrifying war-torn Gaza into beachfront property where he's revered as an idol and a savior? If I honestly describe with adjectives what I'm seeing, it sounds like COVID brain hallucinations. So here's my message to the left. Stop saying stupid shit. Be extremely careful about how you present your ideology because if you're not, it will hurt your movement. This means don't say incredibly sensationalist things, don't embellish anything, and don't be so fucking smarmy. Normal people are not impressed when you make fun of Trump for being orange or having tiny hands or the way he says China.
In addition to Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama will most likely be hit much harder than anticipated.
These are examples of extremely inconsequential things that get a lot more attention than actually troubling characteristics. And the more you talk about them when you are genuinely trying to criticize them or win an argument, the less serious you look. If what I'm describing the worst part of the left wing to be does not apply to you, I'm very proud of you, and I hope you understand that I am not overly generalizing a constituency that I belong to. But this is a common enough pitfall with people that I generally agree with that I feel it is important to address. Nobody will take us seriously as a movement if we keep harping on done-to-death comments that do not fundamentally matter. Which leads me to the people that represent us. Congress makes the left look so bad. And something everyone needs to realize is that Trump preys on the Democrats being stupid. Democratic lawmakers are particularly useless because on one hand, they recognize that Trump is a serious danger and a threat to democracy and runs, at this point in time, on fundamentally unpopular ideas. But on another hand, they're so deathly afraid that if they oppose him too hard, they'll lose the election to him for being too radical. So, in effect, they strongly reject the opponent and propose nothing as an alternative solution. I'm going to continue by carefully explaining why Democrats are their own worst enemy and how their public incompetence strengthens the right wing and turns the public against progressive legislation even when they would directly benefit from it. Trump has garnered messiah status on the back of running against the worst candidates that this party could produce. Hillary Clinton had so many genuine skeletons in her closet that Trump could successfully project himself as an anti-hero against her. He was going to be the bad boy that talks trash and destroys the deep state. Hillary was a corrupt, established politician who represented everything that people hated about federal government. And Trump was that hate. So it really shouldn't be that shocking that he won. Except, yes, it should be, because Trump ran the most unprofessional and idiotic campaign in decades. And how did Democrats respond? They laughed. There's a Jeff Rosenstock quote from one of his best songs that I think perfectly encapsulates how to fight against institutions of power that don't even recognize you. If you listen to the rest of the song, it's clearly criticizing inherently conservative thought. Unfortunately, in this scenario, Democrats refused to see the appeal of what Trump was doing. And as he tore through the primaries, and people loved him for the same reasons that Democrats hated him and scoffed at him, they refused to recognize at any step along the way that what he was doing was working. And the more that Democrats refused to address him with any seriousness, the more they painted themselves into a corner as a party of elitists that don't take outsider candidates seriously. And that validated a lot of animosity that people had towards establishment government. Trump had power because Democrats couldn't stop the things that they refused to see. And that brings me to a point that has empowered a lot of past presidents. The perception of every winner is defined by who they stand against. Trump on his own would never actually win over the American public, but juxtapose his character with an insider elitist who refuses to take him seriously, and he looks a lot more genuine. Kamala Harris's approval rating doubled as soon as she entered the 2024 presidential race. She went from a Biden associate to a counter candidate to Trump. Biden was highly criticized in the 2020 primaries, but as soon as he was nominated, that criticism got a lot quieter among Democrats because he was running against Trump instead of Bernie Sanders now. Unfortunately, Trump was also a counter candidate to Biden and Harris, which is why his approval ratings shot up as he ran against Biden the second time. Biden's administration was highly unpopular by 2024. Politicians' reputation is mostly vivified, at least in the general elections, by who they oppose. And on some level, Democrats know this, because in 2016, 2020, and 2024, their entire campaign revolved entirely around how they were running against Trump, who is obviously so unpopular that he could never win an election. Not once, and definitely not twice. But the Democrats neglected one fact, and that's that popularity in an election is highly relative. Yes, Trump is highly unpopular, but people will vote for him if you offer absolutely nothing. Presidential elections are different from just universal mind reads of who someone would prefer as a candidate. So Democrats have to actually motivate people to get off their couch and vote. 2024 for the Democrats was a disastrous year because in a state of economic instability and a need for refreshment in government as Biden's brain was leaking out of his fucking ears, the Democratic Party ran on a campaign of maintaining the status quo while also maintaining to be the progressive party of the people, keeping abortion rights, keeping regulations, keeping Trump out of office. These aren't bad policies, but they offer no change to a system that wasn't working for people. You have to actually offer things to voters if you want to win their trust, and it can't just be, I won't ruin everything. Weaponizing opposition of Republicans as leverage to win votes doesn't work on its own, because as a party, Democrats are failing to win the votes of people who refuse to vote for Trump. Additionally, the campaign seemed to ignore people's concerns about costs of living and just pointed to stocks being high. You can't talk to a shrinking middle class and tell them that the economy is doing fine. They're not going to believe you because it doesn't reflect the reality that they're living through. Your metric doesn't work. But they can't stop the things that they refuse to see. But let's bring it back home to how this answers the question. Why do people search for any reason to defend clearly bad people? Well, Democrats serve two roles. The first is as a counter-argument to the people we consider villains. And on that front, they fail with flying colors. And when they fail to push persuasive counter-narrative to conservative rhetoric, conservatives win. When that happens, Democrats play a second role, a villain that Republicans successfully project themselves against. When congressmen fail to represent policies that aren't really difficult to get behind, they become the voter's enemy. So in our partisan system, obviously the Republican opponent gains the potential audience of people who have disdain for the Democratic administration. And at this point, whatever terrible shit Trump says just falls to the peripheral because they just want the Democrats to lose so badly. So in the end, what prompts defense for any of these people is genuinely just tunnel vision of partisan voting. And considering all of this, Trump is still tanking on the national stage. This is the Democrats' time to make a positive impression. There's just one thing, just one little thing in the way.
As compromised, as unqualified as we have right now. And the Republican senators know that. So once again, historically bad nominees deserve a historical level of scrutiny. Now on approach. Well, we did get appropriation bills done last night.
They're led by Chuck Schumer, who is quite literally worse than Biden on every front. This man is completely useless, and it is a travesty that he represents a single soul in Congress.
The needs of families, veterans, moms, kids, and rural communities.
Year after year, his vision for the party is to just do nothing. While there's merit to the idea of never interrupt your opponent while they're making a mistake, the mistakes that Trump makes are the ones that he should be interrupting anyways because they hurt everyone, not just the GOP.
And to care for those, our veterans who have served this country.
But no, he doesn't want to stop Trump. He wants to let Trump run wild in the White House until everyone is so mad at Trump that they will turn to the Democrats for help. And for that to come to fruition, in the best case scenario, Trump has to catastrophically ruin something that Democrats could have just publicly saved and they would have looked better for it. But Chuck doesn't give a shit. He might be better policy-wise than the GOP, but he has shown time and time again that he would rather sit politely and wait for the country to seek him out in contrast to more damaging options following the fallout of disastrous policy implementation, rather than just actually meeting voters where they're at and winning the trust and respect on his own merit. And for that reason, he has to go.
It's going to affect your guac. Because what is guacamole made of? Avocados.
Well, little does Trump know he's gonna ruin everything. Isn't he stupid? Like, we don't need you to prove him wrong. We know for ourselves that he's doing something wrong. We need you to help stop him. You're standing there and laughing at him for fucking ruining everything. Fuck you.
And Chuck Schumer is just profoundly uninspiring. He's part of the Democratic movement to neuter Sanders and Walz and AOC or any other progressive politician that threatens to be the kind of leader that he refuses to entertain. His genius plan is to sit around and hope that the entire country will in time regret their vote as the president ruins institutions that keep America functional, instead of doing fucking anything to preserve them himself. And as long as the Democratic Party sits on his hands and fails to saliently take the wind out of right-wing rhetoric, American voters will continue to entertain the GOP's increasingly dangerous antics that prop up both parties as equal sides to the same coin. Because while politics are never going to be easy for all people to agree on, there are always going to be political positions that are just wrong.
We've become such a decent people again. We've now become such a hard-working and energetic people again. What aren't we accomplishing again in Germany now? What tasks do we not have? For years, we've been told that Germans aren't really equal to the other peoples of the world anyway.
Nazis have built up this status as the worst breed of humans to exist in the past 100 years. They were genocidal, fascist, racist, imperialist, and for a long time, their mission was far more successful than it should have been. They were just the worst. So evil. In fact, probably the maximum capacity of evil on Earth. Nothing can ever come close. And nothing ever will. And it's all over now. So, we might as well just let it go. But I mean, nothing can be as bad as the Nazis. Come on. Nazis have been mythologized in this tier of bad that is so high that I think people forget something. They were real. The Third Reich actually happened, and it was not long ago. People say things like, oh, come on, he can't be that bad, he's not Hitler, in the same way that they might say, oh, come on, I can't change that, I'm not God or anything. It's hyperbolized. And that undercuts the threat of something coming from a similar place ever happening again. And people talk about Nazis being bad as this agreeable, objective statement that's apolitical, that no one would disagree with. Nobody would agree with Hitler, at least not a substantial number of people. Except we have documented historical evidence that that's fucking wrong. If everyone actually believed that he and everything he believed were bad, then no one would have backed him on his rise to power. We need to stop acting like people can't be whipped into a frenzy like that, because they were, on a scale so massive it took over Europe. And we also need to stop acting like this ideology is stuck in the past and something that died with the war. Why would it die?
End immigration! One people, one nation! End immigration! One people, one nation!
Unreasonable is not inconceivable. People think about Nazis in this hyperbolically evil way, yet have no interest in actually examining how they rose as a movement. Belittling the threat of any politician by contrasting them against Hitler demonstrates a clear lack of understanding of where he came from. There's no curiosity for who Hitler was before he was Hitler. What did that look like? How can we ever spot it again if we need to? These are good questions, and people just don't give a shit enough to ask them. The reality is that he was a persuasive, passionate speaker who appealed to people on populist rhetoric. He won the attention of the downtrodden by speaking to them about their social and economic instability, and placed blame on an outgroup, and introduced himself as a retribution that would right the wrongs that had been done to you. He called himself a savior, and he was incredibly capable of framing people as inhuman. And this rhetoric was long before concentration camps or waging war. The reason that the Holocaust is called the final solution is because it came last. It was the final destination point of this rhetoric. Why would it come up front? So when people rise to political power with identical rhetoric as Nazi Germany, and someone wants to draw parallels between the two, I won't name names yet because it distracts from the point and isn't one person, it is not an appropriate counter-argument to say, well, that person didn't kill 6 million Jews. But a lot of people are reductive, and to them it can't be truly similar until they accomplish the same results. But if we truly stand by the phrase, never again, standing around and waiting for the end results won't be very helpful. This is why understanding the rise of fascist movements is important. It's the idea that those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. Unfortunately, a lot of people just think that it's impossible to repeat the history of 1940s Germany. Which is stupid, because it's not. Do you expect people to learn from history? What's wrong with you? This is not to say that the Republican Party as it stands today is on its way directly to genocide 6 million people, but it is certainly to say that this road will only yield very, very bad results. If you watch the movie American History X from 1998 during the Bill Clinton administration about gangs in Los Angeles, those characters make the same arguments as modern day conservatives. Again, not that they're going to continue to do the same things as those characters in action, but the end result will inevitably be that the audience is fed the same rhetoric. And in both worlds, Nazis will inevitably feel safer. People are increasingly compliant in America with policies that do not treat immigrants like they are humans because we are basically told that they're not.
We will root out the communists, Marxists, fascists, and the radical left thugs that live like vermin within the confines of our country.
This is all to say that evil is extremely possible. So when anyone threatens to harken back to the villains of the world's past, take it seriously and examine it closer. So what's up with this buffer of plausible deniability that people want to install to separate modern day figures from people like this of our past? The answer is that not a lot of us are old enough to have seen this before. And when that's the case, it is a lot harder to internalize for many people. Time softens the impact of these things. But 90 years ago, people had the same mental buffers that reinstated trust in their leaders. The larger point I am making is not to highlight something specific and say that it is Hitlerian, although I may have done that along the way. But rather what I'm saying is that I want you to be able to use history as a tool to detect these things in the wild. Because all too often people are duped by some fallacy that the most brutal events in history are over and the world has learned from those mistakes. For For instance, we can call back on the Elon salute. That is clearly Nazi sympathetic behavior. Or we can talk about how people tried to make sense of Kanye's statements, trying to work around the truth to make more sense of something in a way that didn't involve him being exactly what he says he is, and must have been a big joke. The reaction of so many people was muted by this notion that being fascist in America is impossible, or at the very least incompatible with having influence. I want to dispel that notion. That instinct will blind you. If this isn't what fascism looks like, what do you suppose it will look like? This? All I'm saying is that if fascism does actually pierce the American political scene, it won't be under the label of the Fourth Reich. It'll be branded as a different, alternative, right-wing solution for your retribution. They will directly tell you that they are fighting for you against them. It is imperative that you allow yourself to detect these things. Do not scoff. This is not fear-mongering. This is media literacy. And I encourage you to abandon this frankly anti-intellectual thought process. Because otherwise, they've got power. Because we can't stop the things that we refuse to see.